my friend, I want to ask you, have you been listening to some of my podcasts for a while and identified for yourself all the areas that you feel your business could be better in? Maybe you just are so busy you haven't yet mastered the working as much as you like bit. Or maybe you're just not bringing in the money, like you're struggling with the income, or it's just not enough. Well, it's time for us to have a conversation. In the show notes, there is a link to my Evolution call. If you're a dance boss and you are ready to take action, let's have a chat and let's see where I can take you. Hello and welcome, lovelies, to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast. My name is Deborah Laws, the dance business expert. My passion is to help you turn your passion into profit while guiding you to work less and earn more. I'm super excited to share interviews with you that I know will inspire and motivate you in your schools, as well as my solo shows where I shall be sharing some great tips and strategies. So if you love the show, please do remember to review, subscribe, and share it with your fellow dance boss friends. So let's get stuck into the business of dance. I am beyond excited today to introduce you to this lovely lady, Callie Stewart, who is going to talk all things around us showing up as our best self every day. So this is a whole bunch of kind of a bit of a therapy session, mindset, self-belief. I think you're going to love this today. Callie, welcome to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you know how much I love you. So I am so excited to be here having a conversation with you.
And I'm excited to share you with my audience because, we often hear people talk, don't we, about businesses, 80% mindset, 20% knowledge. And, I think you'll agree that, a lot of what we do in life and how we succeed or don't exceed is down to our own personal belief systems, isn't it? Before we get stuck into the really juicy stuff, Callie, would you mind sharing what is your background and where do you come from in terms of your qualifications and what it is that you do?
Oh, wow. So what is my background? Professionally, I spent 15 years in corporate and commercial sales. And with that came a whole bunch of qualifications that led me to where I am today. So I have a master's level in psychology, and it started really around consumer behavior. I got into sales really young because it was the only way I thought I could make any money. I left school with little qualifications and I left quickly. I wanted to get into the big wide world and I wanted to start making money. And back then, I was never going to be, a brain surgeon, a doctor, any of those things that I'd been told were good careers that gave us lots of, financial reward. So for me, I went straight into sales because that was a way that somebody like me could earn a lot of money. And 3 or 4 years in, I was like, there's got to be a way to understand people's brains. Like, there's got to be a way to understand why they buy the things that they buy. And if I can learn that, then I can sell them more of the things I want to sell them. And that really got me fascinated with human behavior. So I did a foundation degree in consumer behavior, the psychology behind why we purchase the way that we purchase. And that really led me down a very windy road of really wanting to understand the fascinating creatures that people are. And eventually that brought me to where I am today, which is a leading expert in female identity. Like, what creates the women that we are today? Why do 95% of women you meet hold themselves back, play smaller, people please? Like, we do all of these things that don't really lead us to the place we want to be in life. And that fascinated me so much that I left my career, stopped everything I was doing, and I just started supporting women to become their most powerful, unapologetic, best version, empowered, like whatever the word is. I basically work with women to get to a space where when they wake up in the morning, they are their 10 out of 10 self, like their wholest version in its just entirety.
Wow. Wow. And I can just picture people listening now thinking, oh my gosh, this woman, I need this woman in my life. We all need to wake up with you next to us every morning. But what an interesting journey, actually, to get to where you got to. So actually, in effect, Callie, we could just do a whole podcast on sales and selling our classes and why people buy a class. And that's not really why I brought you on here, although that would be a great topic for another
back class. For that.
Yeah, well, we'll go do part 2. Never mind going home for tea today. We'll just stay and do part 2.
I love that.
But and I often say to people, I don't have the same knowledge and background that you have, but a little bit of training that I have had around sales, people don't always understand what it is that people want when they're parting with their money. They feel like it's around the pricing, it's around the discount, the 5% discount that you dangle in front of them. But actually it's around the exchange of value, isn't it? When they really value what it is, the service, the classes that you're going to give their child, the transformation their child is going to go through. When you get really good at explaining that bit, people will then sign up for classes, won't they?
Absolutely. And I speak about this very much from the female mind, because men buy very differently to how women purchase. But when you are selling a class, when you're selling, a dance class, a theatre class, what the exchange comes down to is what is the emotional value that woman sees in putting her child in your class. And a lot of people, even if they think they're logical, are making emotional decisions. And it will be a variety of things. For one woman, it will be that actually I feel like a good mom when I give my child something that they can develop and grow in. For another, it might be that she doesn't feel like she is doing all the things that she can do. And so this supports her in propping up. Like everything is how we feel emotionally.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that I struggle sometimes when people are, saying, well, I'm going to offer a 5% discount and then my students will sign up for more classes. And I kind of try and take them down that it's the emotional thing that you need to be tapping into, not the 25p off a class that you're going to offer them. But yeah, that is the sales side of things, which in itself I find so fascinating, and we will do part 2 at some stage. But going into the really great juicy bit, which is all about the showing up in a 10 out of 10 every day. What is that, Callie? What is a 10 out of 10? What does that mean exactly?
So over the years, I've had a bit of stick for this. I'll be totally transparent. It triggers a lot of people when I say about being 10 out of 10, because I think a lot of people see it as arrogance or being too big for your boots, or you think you're perfect, and really for me, it's none of those things. Being your 10 out of 10 self, for me, and what I try to teach the women I work with, is it's about accepting your whole self for who you are, not hiding parts of yourself, not dimming parts of yourself down. It's really about understanding who you are when you are who you are, because we show different facets of ourselves in different scenarios, different company. But actually knowing that is still a part of you, and where you feel safe to bring it out and where is best to bring it out. When we embrace the wholeness of who we are, we kind of become unstoppable.
And I know that is something that, you lead by example, because, you do try to make sure that you are being the best version of yourself that you can tap into every day. And, it's really wonderful if you guys ever get to meet Callie, she's not apologizing for who she is. She's saying, this is me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, the wonderful. And I'm showing up authentically. You get me? And it's up to you to then choose whether you like what you see or you don't like what you'll see. But you are always you, aren't you? And I am definitely one of those people that will kind of go, oh, I don't do vulnerable. I won't be vulnerable because then people might think I'm weak. And if people think that I'm weak, they won't trust my expertise. So I am one of those people that has layers of me that I don't show. And what you're saying, I think, if I'm right, is that you encourage everybody to just kind of not stop hiding behind some of the great facets, because being vulnerable is a great thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there is, and I say this, like, there's a time and a place. There are people that are so comfortable in their vulnerableness that they will, they'll cry in a boardroom, like they'll cry in a meeting. And there is being authentic, and then there is actually a lack of owning yourself. And so it really is a balance. I think when you know yourself, when you know your emotions, and if I just go back to my corporate years, there's a lot of times I've sat in front of people and I could feel my emotions coming up. And I've really had to make a decision about, is this appropriate right now to let this out because this is authentic and it's vulnerable and it needs to be seen, versus is this something that actually I need to keep in, and I need to then express myself later in a place where I can sit in the rawness and channel this in a way that serves me. But ultimately, it's that understanding. What I see too often is women that have an opportunity to be vulnerable or to share something that could really impact another woman, and they don't, for fear, for judgment. And that is the worst place to live from. Like, live from understanding and then make a decision. Is it okay or not okay to be vulnerable in this moment? But don't base that on whether you'll be judged or seen in a certain light. That's the other side of the coin that we want to try and avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think my next question is, if we were all showing up each day the best we believe we can, how do we know when we are being a 6 or a 7, or when we're being a 10 or a 2? Like, is there a way we can measure ourselves?
I see this like a barometer, and I talk about this quite a lot, like a barometer of whether you're in your 10 energy or whether you're like feeling a 6, is how you respond to things. It's how you feel about yourself in certain situations. And I had this the other day, actually. I messaged a client and I was having a conversation and I was like, how are you? How are this? And she came back to me and she's like, well, I don't feel great today. I've got a headache. I've got a migraine. This is that, that's that. She's like, I'm definitely not a 10. Right. And some stuff's happened. And I had to say to her, like, you can feel crappy and still be a 10. Like, you can be in a crap situation and still be a 10. It's how you feel about yourself in that moment. And are you bringing everything that you're feeling to that moment? And I think the barometer of, are you being a 6 or are you being a 10 is, if we take decision making, for instance, if you have a decision to make and you make it from a place of your 10 energy, it feels aligned, it feels good. It's not always necessarily a knowing, it's a feeling. And if you are coming at it from a place of your 6 or your 5, you know that there's resistance there. You know that there's that little voice in the back of your head. Like, we know, we are, whether you're spiritual, religious, or none of that, as beings, we are intuitive. Our brains are designed to keep us safe. And that isn't just, play small and don't put yourself out there, but it's also detecting, predators and whatever else. So we are naturally intuitive beings. So if you stop for a minute to ask yourself, where am I making this decision from? What am I feeling about this situation? Like, you can easily start to pick up on that barometer where you are coming at it from. But it is practice. Most of us don't give ourselves time to think about the decision that we're making. We react because that's what we've always done. And it's the reacting because that's what we've always done that keeps us in a perpetual cycle of never really showing the entirety of who we are.
Yeah. And I know that one of the things that you teach, because I've been fortunate enough to be on a couple of your masterclasses, is you talk about it like layers, like literally layer 1, layer 2, level all the way up to layer 10. And quite a lot of those layers are actually layers that are kind of given to us, aren't they? They're layers that are ours, but they're out of our control. Can you explain a little bit about how those layers are formed without giving us a whole masterclass?
Yeah, of course. So I think the easiest way to remember this is everything that you think, feel, do, behave, anything that you are right now as your fully formed adult self was created by the time that you were 7 years old. So anything that happened in your life between the moment you were born and the moment you turned 7, like, has created the identity of the person that you are today. And the only two things that happen from, 8 to the day that you are today is you either feed into or feed out of that script. And what I mean by that is, if you want to do something that contradicts what has gone into those first 7 years, that identity that creates in those formative years, you want to do something that sits outside of that. So as an example, and I will just use myself, I grew up in a council house. I'm a teenage single mother. So my first 7 years were quite traumatic. And I had heard a lot about, how hard life is and how you have to work really hard for everything. And people like us don't get things like that. And so when I got into my early 20s and I started really excelling in my career, that felt uncomfortable for me. It felt conflict because everything in my head was telling me people like me don't have things like this. And so I was feeding out of that script, that identity. And the work really comes by grabbing that, noticing it, and reprogramming to feel and think something different.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the script, that is like our belief systems. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, so our script is a subconscious program that keeps us safe. It keeps us small. It keeps us doing the same things that we have always done, and the same things that we have always done based on what we were taught. So for most people, if they actually stop and look around, they're one of two things. They're either exactly the same as their parents were, or the complete opposite of what their parents were. And both of those things in some cases are unhealthy because they're both driven from a place of not really taking accountability and ownership for the responsibility of the life that you want to live and create. And so when we talk about the real simple way to explain the script is, it is that voice in the back of your head that anytime you want to do something, it has an opinion of it. And a lot of people will talk about this, like, I hear it called the inner critic all the time. Like, the inner critic is the narrative of your everyday situation. Your script is the evidence that fuels that inner critic. Because when that inner critic says something to us, it's not lying, right? That's why we believe it. You want to go out into the world, you want to start a dance school, you want to, do this. And that inner critic will be like, wow, there's 10 other dance schools in this area. What makes you think you can do that? And it's not a lie, right? It's truth. It's logical. It's telling you factual information. And so we then go, oh my God, yeah, that's right. There's 10 other dance schools here. How dare I try and set something up? And the real task with this is hearing that script. It is listening to it. It is deciding what you want to take from it and what you're not going to take from it.
Yeah. So, okay, there are 10 other dance schools in the area. My inner script is saying, who are you to think you can make a success when the other 10 schools are all struggling? But actually, that's not necessarily the facts of what would happen if you started another dance school. So it's knowing and recognizing it, hearing that little voice, I suppose, and then going, do I want to trust that little voice? Do I want to take that information that it's giving me? And like you said, it's there to protect us, isn't it? It's there to stop you from failing. Absolutely. Do I want to listen to that, or do I want to do it anyway? Because actually I'm gutsy and I've got determination and I'm going to step outside of my script and prove myself wrong, so as to speak. It's like battling with your own self, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. When I first start working with people, And I like the first conversation I have with them, I always say, like, it's like having a mini civil war in your head. Like, your conscious version is going, I really want to do this. I want to start a dance school. Like, I want to do this and I want to get 50 kids in and I want to. And then that voice is like, well, how are you going to do that? You can't do that. That's not possible. And we spend so much time in the argument that actually the script wins anyway, because we don't take the steps to move forward. And so it's really about catching that voice and then asking yourself, do I want to listen to this or do I want to make a different choice? And that is honestly the extent of this.
So am I right? Please correct me if I'm wrong. So the inner voice is the little voice that the inner narrative is the little voice that tells us this is what's going to happen. The script is the actual experience that you've had during childhood that almost supports that negative little person sitting on your shoulder. So you, for example, were busy. Well, I know it's not going to work because it didn't work when I was growing up. Like it's like the proof that backs up that nasty little voice that holds us back. Is that right?
That's exactly what it is. So I see lots of people working on their inner critic, their inner narrative, and they do a lot of mindset work. And for some people, that works. Like, they do the mindset work, they quieten the voice, and that works for them. The problem is that voice is powered by that script. And so it never goes away. And so even if you can turn that voice down, you will sometimes find that you're not really acting or behaving the way that you would want to. You're still in a diluted version of yourself. You really have to learn to understand what sits in that script that is fueling that voice so that you can step out of that, step away from it, and create an entirely new identity that really allows you to be that 10 out of 10 version, that whole version. Because when you are living in that script, whether it's loud or not loud, whilst ever you're in it, even at your best, even at my dance school's full, my marriage is perfect, like I've been on 10 holidays, I live in a gorgeous house, I drive a nice car, you're never going to get above an 8 or a 9 because your script will be like, well, that's cocky. What if you go out there and say you're a 10 and then you lose it all? What if you go out and say you're a 10 and somebody says this? So you're still in a place where you're being much smaller than you're capable of being. So stepping outside of that is really about saying, I hear you, I get what you're saying, but I'm going to choose to do something different anyway, because I get to. We absolutely get to choose. And I think for so many people, that concept is so simple. That's what keeps them stuck in the not choosing. Like, the biggest objection that I get from people all the time is, but I can't just choose. I can't just choose. And we absolutely can just wake up and decide, I'm 10, I'm my wholest self, and I'm going to see myself in my entirety, and that's okay.
Now, I would love to invite you to the Dance Business Conference, which is held in Birmingham in the UK. This is a wonderful 2-day event where you are going to listen to some incredible keynote speakers. You're going to do some workshopping. You're going to learn lots of new things around running your dance school. You're going to meet lots of exhibitors that have businesses that could be great for you to work with. But more importantly, we're going to make friends, we're going to have fun, and we're going to hang out together, all learning how to be inspired and motivated to run a better school. And of course, we also have the Gala Dinner Dance, which is the red carpet event of the year for dance school owners, where we present the Dance Business Awards. So if you would like to exhibit or sponsor the conference, if you would like to attend or enter the Dance Business Awards, then please go to www.dancebusinesssolutions.com, where you can buy your tickets, find out more information, and hopefully come join me on the 8th and 9th of August. See you there. Wow. So the choice level is, do I listen to the inner voice? Do I act upon my previous experiences, or do I choose to do it different because I want a different outcome?
Absolutely.
Where do we find that bravery from, Callie?
That comes from taking the steps. That comes from cultivating. Like, it starts with courage. And I again, like, I love conversation. I love talking about this because I think a lot of people see me and they're like, oh, it's so easy for you, Callie. You've got so much confidence. But before I had confidence, I had courage. I didn't feel like the world was going to accept me in this 10 out of 10 state. In fact, I knew it wouldn't. The world is not designed to, especially for women, and that's a whole other topic, right? But the world is not set up to support women in their entirety. And so I knew that going out into the world and being like, look at my bad self, was going to get a reaction. But I had to cultivate the courage to do it anyway. And the thing with courage and confidence is it literally comes down to how much you're willing to back yourself. And I made a decision because for the longest time in my life, I was not my 10 out of 10 self. In fact, I've been some awful versions, some really, truly terrible versions. And so for me, especially going from somebody who hadn't really been a very nice person to somebody that was all of a sudden like, check my bad self and was really difficult. But I backed myself and I made the decision that no matter what, I back myself because this is what I want my life to look like. And so it started with courage, the courage to go out there and say, hi, this is me and I'm okay with this. And if you're not, move along. I'm no longer here to tolerate anything that you've got to say about me. And then I did it again. And every time somebody said, who the f- do you think you are? I just kind of said, I'm Callie Stewart. That's who I am. And I've decided, and that's okay. And gradually, I've lived in this version for nearly 8 years now. Gradually, it got easier to back myself. But I still have days when I walk into a room and somebody's meeting me for the very first time. And I think, just dull it down because meeting you for the first time is going to be, you're too much, you're too loud, you're too opinionated, you're too all of it. And then I think, do you know what? They're going to meet me for the first time and they're going to make a decision. But the thing that I get for the first and only time is this life. And I'm just not prepared anymore to dilute any version of myself for somebody else's comfort. That doesn't mean I go out of my way to make them uncomfortable, but my hope is you see me in my entirety and it gives you permission for you to be in your entirety. And I think if more women really owned that, if more women had the courage to say, actually, this is who I want to be, and just went and became it, the planet would be so different. And I truly believe that.
My goodness. I just love that. You get to choose who you get to be. No matter what background you came from, no matter where you started, good, bad, difficult, challenging, easy, wherever you come from, you still get to choose where you go from this day forward, from this breath forwards. And I really love that because I really do believe that a lot of the clients that I work with, a lot of my lovely dance school owners are capable of really creating quite incredible businesses and lives for themselves and their family. But they do live in a slightly dumbed down version of themselves. And, when I work with people one-to-one, some of the first questions I ask, in our first Kickstart strategy session are quite personal. They are, what's going to hold you back this year? What are the things that I need to know about you that I need to challenge you on? Because I want you to bring your best self out this year. I don't want to be working with the pessimist, the procrastinator, the overthinker. Like, I get that that's all part of you, but I also need you to know that you can make choices whether you're going to sit in that mind frame.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, and I think it's so wonderful. It's very empowering what you're doing, isn't it, Callie? And I think I'd love to ask a little bit of how does that actually present itself in terms of what you do? Because you mentioned that you left corporate. So what is it that you're doing at the moment? What does your work look like? Who do you work with? Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for asking. So I genuinely feel like life is a journey. Like, we are on this journey and, nobody gets out alive, right? So like, let's make this journey everything it can be. And so I myself am a bit of an outlier in the fact that I'm really unapologetic about who I am. And that makes me most of the time really unafraid to take risks and big, bold moves. And so I left corporate and started a business because I wanted to. In fact, actually, that's a lie. So I left corporate to volunteer. So I left my corporate because I'd got this newfound understanding about how this script works. And I thought, oh my God, I've been held hostage by this for 30 years. Like my whole life has been lived out of this script. I can't have that anymore. And I became a little bit obsessed with spreading the word. Like I'd have made a great messenger for religion because I was like, everybody needs to know this. Probably a bit too much. And so I actually left corporate to go and volunteer. And I went to volunteer with a local Samaritans charity because I felt like they were the people that needed me most. And actually, in the short time that I volunteered there, what I realized was people at a very desperate, almost end of the line position take action. They either take action to end it or they take action to change it. But either way, they take an action. And what I realized was there's a much more dangerous place to be in life. And that is something that I call the okay club. I'm just okay. Like, life's not bad. I've got nothing to complain about. Like, it's just nice. And one of the things that I talk a lot about is it's okay to not be okay, but it's kind of not okay to just be okay. Like, you can be so much more than that. And so from there, I decided to set up my business. I wanted to coach women into being their absolute wholest, just empowered self. So I set up a little business. I went into this online space. I started talking to female business owners and entrepreneurs about the fact that you are already quite tenacious and you're already quite bold, which is, why you've started a business. That takes courage to do that. Like that takes all of the things that I want to kind of elevate and expand and just make huge in you. And so I started working with business owners, and just going back to like the very start of the conversation about, that 80-20 rule, like 80% mindset, 20% knowledge, experience, strategy. Like it really is so important that you know who you are and that you own who you are. And I have seen business owners transform their client base, their impact, their revenue, just by going, actually, do you know what? This is the version of me I thought I had to put out there. And actually, I'm going to start showing you who I really am. And one of the reasons that it works is because, for every woman listening to this podcast right now, if she stopped and asked herself, how much of yourself are you showing to the world? I bet it's not 100%. But people want that. They need that. So when you are the person that is showing up as your 100% version, as your 10 out of 10 version, people are drawn or not because they need that. Like they want to be connected. Like women especially inherently, like it's in our DNA to come together. And so I'd been coaching over the last 5 or 6 years, and this really led me to a place where actually there's a lot of women that are making really bold moves in the world. They are stepping into their 10 out of 10 version, and then they're getting there and they're kind of looking around and they're like, well, who do I celebrate this with? Because there's not many women that can hold a 10 out of 10 successful woman. And so that led me to the end of last year to actually closing my coaching business down and opening a space, a community for women to come together in sisterhood. So the business is called Sisterhood Club, and that's what it is. It's a club of women, a community of women that come together and accept every other woman in that space for who they are. And we have in the last 6 months done some incredible things. We're just about to go through another evolution because I get fascinated by people, and I've been trying to cultivate what is it about the women inside Sisterhood Club that make it what it is, because we have such a variety. We have women from their 30s all the way up into their 70s. And I've not seen that anywhere else. I've not seen such a wide variety of ages, backgrounds, experience, and it worked. And so I became really fascinated over the last few months about why is this working? And what I've realized is Sisterhood Club is a safe, empowering community for what I would call complicated women. And I think when I talk about complicated women, I think it is those women that realize the capacity of all of the facets that they have, even if they're not in a space where they're showing everybody else yet, but they know in themselves that, you know, I can be so confident. I can go out into the world and I can start my dance school. I can, you know, teach a class. I can do all of these things. And then I go home and actually I don't feel very confident and I feel like I've ballsed it up or I did something wrong. Or I can be really happy about tiny things, but I can also lose my shit over tiny things. And the complexities of being able to weave in and out of that duality of the fact that actually I feel really abundant most of the time. And then something small like scrolling through Facebook and seeing something somebody else has done can instantly slap me with this feeling of lack and this like, I'm not moving fast enough. I'm not quite. And I think that is the complexity of a woman that owns herself, even if she is not outwardly showing the world that yet. And I think that's what we've got with Sisterhood Club. We've got a community of complex, complicated women that actually just want to be seen. They want to be witnessed and they want to be celebrated. And we really hold each other. So I'm really excited about it.
It just is incredible what you're creating. And I think, you know, for a lot of women, they have their roles in their life, don't they? They're a mother or they're a wife or, you know, they're someone's daughter or they're a business owner or they're a mentor. You know, they have all these roles and these hats that they put on. But it's quite rare for women to come together and actually have that place where they're just a woman and they're just there being female with other females that will treat them in that safe way where there's no judgment, there's no, you know, I'm looking up to you, I'm looking down to you, you're earning more money, I'm not earning money. You know, having somewhere where you feel safe with other women and connecting with other women on a deeper level is just not out there until now, of course. So it's very exciting what you're doing, Callie. And I love the journey. I love the fact that you've done so many things and it's all come together to this point in time. And I think, you know, anybody that runs a business, anyone that has experienced their own journey, we've all got our own journey. That's the one, we've all got one, whether we like it or not. You know, our journeys are just, you know, they're part of what makes us us. But I also think from what you've said and what I believe that we can also take charge of some of that journey. It's not always just left to fate. And, you know, being able to fulfill your dreams and ambitions because you have the right self-belief and support network with other women. Like it almost feels like what you're doing is so similar to what I do within my community, bringing women together that are, you know, happy to share and lift each other up whilst still being on a journey together. It's very similar, isn't it, actually?
I love that. And I think some of the best business communities that I have been in are able to hold that space. They are, and I've been in a lot of communities that are well-intentioned and are trying to do great things and just haven't quite nailed that duality piece. Like, I'm showing up and I want you to celebrate me and I want you to see me as a success and I want you to do all of these things. But actually, I'm also going to show you when my sales have dropped and when my numbers are low because I want that whole, and I don't see a lot of communities doing that piece. I see a lot of communities doing either or, like everybody comes in and they're so super successful. And I'm sometimes in there scratching my head thinking, well, why are you here? What can I help you with? But the fact that you are cultivating and holding a space where women can come and go, see me, support me, witness me in my glory and also in my crap, that's actually really magical, Deb. I love that you do that.
Yeah, very much so, because, you know, life is not always an upward curve. You know, it's a whole roller coaster of ups and downs, isn't it? And, you know, I think for some people to show up when they're doing really well, is as hard as to show up when they're not doing really well and vice versa. And it's definitely something that, you know, I work hard to try and cultivate a space where people are genuine, they're transparent. You know, we all like people that are like us. And the more relevant people are to us, the more we connect And those connections get deeper and deeper. So when someone's all roses and glory, and the only time they show up is when they've had this win and that win and another celebration, and now my kids have all done this, and I earned this much, and I did this sales campaign, and I got all these extra trials. Like, that's great. We're so pleased. But what about all the stuff when you're on the downward part of the roller coaster that you never share? Because you don't share that, I now feel a failure because you're doing so well, and I can't relate to you because you're so successful all the time. And so to be able to share the ups and downs, the vulnerability of that in a group of other women, I think is very powerful, very powerful.
And I wish more women understood that, because the woman that shows up and is always winning, it's physically, mentally, spiritually, like physiologically, not possible to always be on an upward trajectory. Like, we're not designed as the beings that we are to maintain that uphill all the time. Like, we do come down, we do have lows. Like, and so when you come into a space and you're the person that is all the time, like on the high, on the high, on the high, it makes it so difficult to form that connection, because we know that it's not true. And it's like, you're right, like, it is triggering, and it makes us go, well, I must be failing, I must be doing something wrong, I must be doing this. But ultimately, when we think about it long enough, we know it's none of those things. It's just that we feel that because we can't articulate that's bullshit, because nobody lives like that. And so it really stops us from connecting. And then depending on your personality type, like for me, I get really frustrated with things like that because I want to have a connection. I am not here for the small talk. I am here for the big talk. I'm here for the deep, long conversations. Like if I meet you and I decide you're my friend, we are having sleepovers, we are picnicking, like we are sharing our deep, dark thoughts. And so when somebody comes into a space and just gives you the Barbie level, it makes it so difficult to form those bonds and connections. And then I, because of my personality type, find that frustrating because I feel like it's such a waste.
So we need to be showing up, but Barbie and Bridget Jones.
Absolutely.
Both versions. Oh, well, I could talk about this stuff all day long because, obviously I need to appreciate that some of the people listening are, aren't just women, but at the same time, a vast majority are. And so, and I think this stuff is the same, doesn't matter our gender. We all still have a script. We all still come from our deepest, darkest beliefs. We're all capable of choice and change, aren't we? So, I'm sure it's helpful for anyone that's listened to this today. But getting on to just like a final question around it, really, I sometimes ask my clients, what is the legacy that you're creating, that you're going to leave behind? What is the good you're going to have done in the world? If you were to look back on your deathbed, what is it that you're trying to create, Callie, in terms of that legacy?
That is such a big question. I love that. So I suppose there's two things that I would really want. If I was on my deathbed looking back, there's two things. There's something I would want for me and something I would want for the world. And I think when you are in a role of service, when you're only in a role of service and you don't take yourself into account for that, that's as detrimental as when you're in a role that only serves yourself. And so for me, that moment when I'm going to take my last breath and I leave this earth in whatever capacity that happens, I want to know that I didn't shortchange myself. I hear horror stories all the time from women that say, I wish I'd have done this, I wish I'd have done that. And for me, like, no matter what you believe, whether you think you're a starseed and you've got multiple soul journeys, whether you believe in reincarnation or like whatever you believe, the only certainty is this human capsule that you are in now. And to shortchange, this version of you, to have not done something, if I thought about it long enough, it would make me sick to my stomach to think that one day I will be on my deathbed thinking, Callie, you should have done that. Callie, you should have done this. Like, that horrifies me, Deb, horrifies me. So that's the thing for me. Like, I don't want to shortchange myself all my life. And I think the impact on the world is to help other women not shortchange themselves and actually know that it's okay to go out there and be everything that you are. And yes, there's people that aren't ready to see that. There's people that aren't ready to see you and witness you in all of that glory. But there will be women that are waiting for permission. And if you're the one that gives it to them, like, what a life. I say this all the time. At the end of every masterclass I ever run, I always say, if you woke up tomorrow and you stepped into your 10 out of 10 wholest version, your entirety of who you are, and you did that again the next day and the day after, and you did that for 7 days straight, and then 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, you were still in that version. 3 months from now, you had had 12 weeks of waking up every day, being that whole version, accepting you in your entirety. 6 months from now, you were still doing that. How different would your life look? And if every woman in the world knew that, did that, and supported each other in achieving that, oh my God, we would change the face of this earth.
Ooh, big stuff. That's a most beautiful big legacy that you're going to leave behind. And I have no doubt that you will too. So we take our hats off to you, and we support you, Callie, in your vision and your legacy. Gosh, I could talk all day, and I think that we have actually spoken for some time on this. It fascinates me. That's why I could continue, on with the conversation. But time to just wrap this up a little bit with some silly fun stuff, which I normally do at the end of my podcast. So we're just going to kind of not lighten the mood, because that sounds like it's been a heavy mood. It hasn't. It's been an uplifting one. But let's ask.
Bring the heaviness. I'm here for the big stuff. I get it.
Call it heavy stuff. Let's just call it deep stuff.
Yes, there we go.
Deep is different to heavy, and this has been a fabulous deep conversation, which I'm sure and I hope everybody has enjoyed. But what I really want to know is, what's your favorite ice cream?
Oh my gosh! So I didn't know you were going to ask me that, and I
know
I have a problem with ice cream.
Of course you do.
I lose all control when it comes to ice cream. If I go within 5 yards of an ice cream van, there's trouble. So this started when I first had Miley, my first daughter. So 15 years ago, we went on a day trip to Skegness. And when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot. So I got one holiday a year, and it was always to Skegness. And so when I had Miley, I was obsessed with taking her there. And when we arrived, it was really early in the morning, like 7:30, 8:00. And the only place that was open was a little ice cream parlour on the beachfront. And I had salted caramel ice cream. And that was 15 years ago. And now I'm 8 stone heavier. And I swear it's because I eat salted caramel ice cream like it's going out of business.
But I feel like this is part of your script that is leading this behaviour, for sure.
It absolutely is. Because would I choose to have absolutely no control when it comes to salted caramel ice cream? No, I would not choose that. So therefore, that's my script.
Nobody else yet, by the way, has turned the ice cream question into a whole deep inner self answer.
It's so bad. Look how red I've gone, look, because I am actually embarrassed about how much salted caramel ice cream I eat. So bad.
So what I forgot to tell you at the beginning was that these were fast shoot questions and you had to answer them off the bat. I forgot to tell you that.
Oh, okay.
But I'm so glad I didn't, because I'm so glad I forgot, because we would never know that about you and we wouldn't have had the ice cream story. But we'll go quicker with the next ones now.
No stories. Okay. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. Right. Favorite business book?
Atomic Habits. James Clear. It's right behind me here. I've actually got 2 copies.
Fabulous. Favorite icon and why?
Taylor Swift. I think I'm the biggest Swiftie in the world because I think she's phenomenal. I think what she has created is phenomenal. And I think the community of Swifties are just to create a community of women that belong and feel that belonging through her words blows my mind.
Love that. If you were to spend 15 minutes with someone that's no longer here, who would that be and why?
Oh, great question. So I instantly wanted to say Kurt Cobain, Nirvana. I think that was the 15-year-old version of me that was like, let's spend time with Kurt Cobain. Who would I?
That's just because that was a crush.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what it's like. Somebody I'm obsessed with, I would spend time with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
I'd love to empower her.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, work on Marilyn Monroe. And last one, if you could hang out for 15 minutes with someone that is still here on the planet, apart from Taylor Swift, who might that be?
Whitney Wolf.
Who's that?
Whitney Wolf is the founder of Bumble. So Whitney Wolf was a co-founder of Tinder back in the day, which is the swiping dating app, and actually was forced out of that role through a series of terrible male behaviour towards her. And instead of letting that defeat her or ground her down, she said, fine, I'll just go and do something my own way, and created Bumble. And I think that it takes a special type of woman to face that type of adversity and come back. And if I could spend 15 minutes picking her brain, I would feel like a richer woman for it.
Wow, what fabulous answers, including the ice cream answer. So thank you so much. And a massive a whole big hug and gratitude coming your way for sharing your expertise, your thoughts, your honesty. I knew this podcast was going to be amazing, and it absolutely lived up to that. Thank you so much, Callie. And if people want to come and find you, how do they come and check out Sisterhood Club? How do they track you down? How do they stalk you? Great
question. I love being stalked. So please do find me, send me stalky-like messages. Like, I'm so here for that. I am on Instagram as I am Callie Stewart. You can get me on Facebook at Callie Louise Stewart, because that's official. You can get Sisterhood Club on Facebook and Sisterhood Club Official on Instagram. And that is where I hang out.
Brilliant. Everybody go and check out Callie. Go and find out all the other wonderful things that she's doing in the world. And again, Callie, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this. Thank you.
So, my friend, I want to ask you, have you been listening to some of my podcasts for a while and identified for yourself all the areas that you feel your business could be better in? Maybe you just are so busy you haven't yet mastered the working as much as you like bit. Or maybe you're just not bringing in the money, like you're struggling with the income, or it's just not enough. Well, it's time for us to have a conversation. In the show notes, there is a link to my Evolution call. If you're a dance boss and you are ready to take action, let's have a chat and let's see where I can take you.